Myself, Dr. Sachinandan De, Principal Scientist, Animal Biotechnology Center, NDRI, Karnal. I am going to talk about you regarding this real-time PCR and its details. PCR, which is discovered in 1984 by Kary Mullis, and this discovery has changed in the biological science in many ways because of its use in different purposes. In 1984, Kary Mullis discovered this process, and in 1989, the molecule used in this PCR, that means Stark DNA polymerase, was named as a molecule of the year. In 1993, Kary Mullis awarded with Nobel Prize because of his breakthrough discovery. It is not that only simple a technique, but this technique is used in many aspects of biological science, which revolutionized the not only genetic engineering, molecular biology, but also in biological science. Let us see what are the different use we can take from this real-time PCR or the PCR. Number one, PCR is used mostly for preparation of DNA. If you want to do any work with DNA, so then this particular process is required. So that means your DNA is a starting material for your experiment. So you need to prepare your DNA, and PCR is must. Number two, your DNA is ready. Now you want to analyze the sequence, or you want to count the DNA. Again PCR comes. That means you can count the number of DNA present in any solutions. Number three, what are the different compositions available in the DNA which you have amplified in the in vitro? That means the sequence available in the DNA that can also be monitored or judged by means of PCR. Number four, this particular technique is part and parcel of the other molecular techniques available in the lab. Say for example, cloning, sequencing, in vitro mutagenesis, whatever manipulation you want to do, it is must PCR. You cannot bypass the PCR. That means PCR is one of the part of most of the molecular biology technique. Another is this PCR can be used for diagnostic purpose for detection of many genetic diseases, viral diseases and bacterial diseases. So this is one of the most important breakthrough discovery in the biological science, and which is now part of the biological science system. By now, I talked little bit about different aspects of the real-time PCR. I think you might have gone through it, and it is very much, I think you have learned about it. Now, one important thing I want to mention in this particular point, the quality of the DNA and quality of RNA. All of you may be knowing different quality aspect of the DNA. Quality and quantity both matters a lot once you are going for any in vitro work related with DNA or RNA. DNA quality you can judge by UV spectrophotometer, and they are OD at 230, 260 and 280 nanometer wavelength, or you can scan through 230 to 260 or 280 or 300 nanometer wavelength, then you can get the quality. Or same DNA molecule you can run in the gel, you can see their fragment pattern and how they are moving, right. But the important part of this quality is that you must judge the quality before you start any experiment with this. So like DNA, RNA is also qualitative matter is very important. Most of the RNA it is liable to degrade while you are in vitro process of isolation. So you have to be very much careful about what kind of RNA you are isolating and what is their quality. And if you run in the gel, you will be able to find very strong band of 2 rRNA band. If it is not there, probably you cannot go through for this RT-PCR. So the important part is the quality of the RNA. Either you run in the gel, or if you have some other apparatus, say for example, you can go for bioanalyzer, in which you can get the RIN number. If the RIN number of the RNA is 8 or above 8, then you can think that it is good. If it is bioanalyzer is not there, don't worry for that. Simply you run in agar gel, whatever RNA you have, and you must see two main RNA band, 20S and 18S RNA. If the RNA band is not there, not there, and it is moving only one band, you could able to see very strong and illuminating band migrating fast, then you can assume that this RNA quality is not good, because all RNA has been broken down into smaller fragment, and it is going to give you a single band in the fast moving band, and it is a fuzzy band. RNA band is always fuzzy band, and it is moving very fast. And while isolating DNA, you should not isolate, you should not get the DNA contamination in it. Whenever we try to isolate DNA or RNA, if you try to isolate RNA, you will be getting DNA, it is a part of it. And if you are going to isolate DNA, you are going to get some part of traces of RNA. And if you are isolating RNA for the RT-PCR, be careful, you should not contaminate your RNA with DNA. Any small contamination with DNA, it will give you much more error in your experiment afterwards. And you do not know whether amplification in the RT-PCR is coming from cDNA preparation from the RNA or is from contaminating DNA. So one has to be very much careful once you are going for the whether DNA contamination is there or not. So contamination removal, that means you should not have not only visible, on any kind of invisible DNA is there, then you have to be very much careful. This is especially important in case of bacteria, because in bacteria there is no RNA in intervening RNA sequences, intron sequences in the bacterial DNA. But in case of mammalian or in case of eukaryotes, you have a intron sequences. So by placing your primer, you could able to know whether I am going to amplify a RNA, a genomic DNA or a part of from the RNA. So one has to be very much careful once you are going through RT-PCR in case of bacteria. So that means you should avoid any kind of unwanted DNA contamination in your RNA preparation. And then comes different solvent, what about other salts and other solvents coming along with your preparation. So try to avoid getting any kind of contamination along with your RNA preparation. RNA should be absolutely pure. Get total RNA. If your tissue sample is the matter, say for example, I have tissue sample limitation is there, say for example, oocyte, sperm DNA, sperm RNA you want to get. So tissue sample, no doubt it's a genuine material of very costly material, precious material. In that case, you can use column. If you think that my tissue is not the problem, straight away you go for triazole based method. It is one of the best and very foolproof method. You can get very good quality RNA which can be processed for cDNA preparation and afterwards for going to the RT-PCR experiment. Discovery of PCR. PCR discovered in 1984 by Kary Mullis. In 1989, the molecule used for the PCR, that means this Tuck DNA polymerase, is named as a molecule of the year. In 1993, Kary Mullis awarded with Nobel Prize for his breakthrough discovery. Components include DNTPs 200 micromolar, template 100 nanogram, Tuck DNA polymerase 1 unit per 20 to 30 microliter of reaction mixture. We need a PCR machine or thermocycler which will provide 3 temperature zone, temperature 94 degree centigrade, 60 degree centigrade and 72 degree centigrade, and capability to go to the next temperature very quickly. Real-time PCR machine, as the name indicates, requires a special PCR instrument to monitor the DNA amplification continuously. Fluorescent dye are used to monitor the availability of double-stranded DNA in the reaction mixture. Total time requirement for real-time mixture will vary from 30 minutes to 2 hours depending on processivity of the polymerase enzyme. PCR and real-time PCR are having many different types which can be used for the laboratory purposes. It can be a fast PCR, that means it is very quick processing, and direct PCR, whatever sample you are having, you can directly go from RNA or DNA to the PCR. Or reverse transcript PCR, that means if your preparation is RNA, you can make cDNA, and from cDNA you can do the PCR. High fidelity PCR, in which probably you can amplify DNA more accurately than compared to any other kind of PCR. And quantitative PCR, where you can able to quantify the number of DNA or RNA present in the biological fluid. Reading the data after the PCR is known as endpoint PCR. That means you want to see the PCR product at the end of the reaction, which is known as endpoint PCR. And reading your DNA or reading the data while reaction is in process is known as real-time PCR. It also estimates quantity of template while reaction is in process. That means reaction is going on, you can monitor the progress of it. That is why reaction is named as real-time PCR. In PCR, DNA is expected to amplify exponentially. Theoretically, you should get a DNA, it should be amplified exponentially, but practically it is not that. In reality, the DNA PCR reaction, the product is not exponentially amplified, but product is amplified little bit exponentially at the beginning and then linear, and then at the end it is plateau. Linear and plateau indicates the product is already been saturated because of this limitation of different reactants, and enzyme activity is little bit slow compared to the earlier one. So, plateau and linear phase appears. While running the RT-PCR in process, the machine will show a S-shaped curve. This S-shaped curve is divided into three parts. One is exponential phase at the beginning, and then linear phase, and third is the plateau phase. Exponential phase indicates doubling of the template or product DNA, and linear plateau phase indicates lowering of the enzyme activity and different components available in the reaction mixture at the end of the 35 to 40 cycles. Normal or endpoint PCR, we monitor the product at the end of the PCR, and the machine is not able to read the amount of DNA PCR product generated. So, we need to handle the PCR product, which is known as post PCR handling. In real time PCR, fluorescent DNA binding molecules are incorporated in the PCR reaction mixture, and the machine is able to read the increase in fluorescence, that is the increase in amount of DNA. That is why the name is real time PCR. The S-shaped curve, we need to mark the point in terms of cycle number in the exponential phase, which is known as CT value or cycle threshold. Where the fluorescence passes the threshold, so we should mark the cycle number as a CT value. The CT value increases as the template DNA decreases in the solution, and CT value reduces when the DNA concentration increases in the solution. Baseline at the bottom indicates, we call it as a no template, or the machine is not able to read the DNA available in the reaction mixture. As I told, the CT value is less if the amount of DNA is very high. That means CT value is left side towards your S-shaped curve, and the CT value increases when the amount of DNA is less. That means CT value will shift to the right side of the curve, and one CT value difference is equivalent to two-fold differences in your starting DNA template concentration, and 3.3 CT value differences is correspond to 10-fold differences in the starting template material in your solution. What is new or unique in real time PCR? It can quantify the presence of template DNA in the reaction mixture. Thus, it is qualitative as well as quantitative in nature. There are three major categories of the applications. Number one, transcript abundance, which is equivalent to the number of copies of mRNA present in the tissues or cell. Number two, DNA copy number, that is the number of times a gene present in the genomic DNA or in the cell or nucleus. Number three, quantitative estimation of number of infectious particles in any tissues or cell. There are three major types of real time PCR you can use, and in all these cases a control is must for all these experiments, and to have a control as a positive as a negative control is must. And if you want to have a control of your own choice, you can have a spiking experiment is also necessary to validate this particular experiment of your choice. Variables of RT-PCR. RT-PCR can be performed with different types of tissue sample, RNA, and different cDNA preparation and different chemistries of PCR. So, designing experiment is the most important in real time PCR. Based on your questions and type of gene expression and types of tissue available to you, so you can plan your experiment accordingly. So, these are the different variables available with you. So, you choose in which particular category you belongs and how you are going to ask the question, whether it is a one-step PCR, whether it is a two-step PCR, and based on your available sample and your available query, so you plan experiment. In the tissues are abundant and plan for the triazole based DNA isolation. Most of the cases experiments are two-step in nature, and in first step you prepare the cDNA with random hexamer and then divide the cDNA into a number of tube for your gene expression. How to prepare cDNA? General strategy for how we should prepare the cDNA or RT-PCR gene based expression. Say if you isolate your RNA, total cellular RNA in terms of from any kit or any chemistry method, and then 500 nanogram or 2 microgram of total RNA can be used for cDNA preparation. You can prepare cDNA by 3 methods: by using random hexamer, by using oligo-DT or gene specific primer. If you are using random hexamer, mostly people go for the random hexamer method and can be used for a number of different gene expression purpose. If you are using for oligo-DT, it can also be used in different gene expression, provided your mRNA should have a poly A tail at the 3' end. If you are using gene specific primer, can only be used for this for expression of only specific gene expression. So this cDNA preparation you cannot use for a number of other gene which you want to do that. So random hexamer is the best option for measuring a number of gene expression in a single DNA preparation. DNA binding dyes. DNA is not visible by naked eye, so you have to provide a dye which will bind to the DNA and then give the rays, UV rays to the particular or ultraviolet rays, or which we cannot see by our naked eye. They will go and bind to the dye which is bound against to the DNA and then give you a illumination which indirectly we can able to see. There are different types of dyes available for this kind of DNA visualization. Ethidium bromide is most commonly used in laboratory. So ethidium bromide is known for this DNA identification purpose. Other than ethidium bromide, cyber green, eva green, pico green can be used for the DNA visualization purpose. They are all intercalator, they bind to the DNA and they absorb the low wavelength or high energy rays and then illuminate the rays in a visible manner, so that our naked eye or camera can able to visualize that particular presence of DNA. Cyber green, this is the DNA binding dye we can use alternative to the ethidium bromide for visualization of nucleic acid. Cyber green binds directly to the nucleic acid. Upon excitation with a high light source, emits green light that can be used for quantification and imaging of the DNA. So cyber green binds all types of DNA, non-specific binding to the DNA, and it also bind it in unbound condition. It will provide a minimum level of fluorescence, but when it binds to the DNA, it will give much more illumination, which will be useful for our quantification purpose. And cyber green is less mutagenic if you compare with ethidium bromide. Ethidium bromide is much more mutagenic and it is less sensitive also. Cyber green is detection limit is 60 picogram per band if you are using 300 nanometer of transilluminator, but ethidium bromide sensitivity is much less. It is 25 times less sensitive than cyber green. DNA we cannot see through naked eye, but by sending the ultraviolet rays at 260 or 280 nanometer, we can able to find out the optical density of the DNA, and from the optical density we count the concentration of the DNA present in the solution. If we take a scan from 200 to 320 or 340, then probably we can be able to get a kind of graph available here. At 260 you will be having highest kind of peak, and that 260 peak indicates the presence of DNA available in the, whether it is DNA or RNA present in the solution. So we can estimate the amount of present available in the solution. If OD is 1, so 260 of double stranded DNA will be 50 microgram per ml. If the 260, if the OD is 1 for single stranded DNA, the amount will be 37 microgram per ml, and if the OD for single stranded RNA, it is 40 microgram per ml. This is the indirect way of estimation of the DNA or RNA presence in the solution. Once DNA in the double helical form, and if you are going to increase the temperature, the DNA double helix, the complementary strand will denature themselves and two strand will separate, and because of separation of the two strand, the optical density absorbance is also increases, which we normally known as hyperchromacity. So by increasing the temperature, the OD value if increases, then it indicates the presence of DNA in the solution. This is one of the important characters to estimate once you are having the quality of the DNA available in the solution. You have a amplified DNA, You can take optical density from 220 to 360 as given in this particular slide, and if you increase the temperature, the particular OD value is also increases as I told earlier. So, OD value increases means optical density increases because of denaturation of the DNA, and this optical value increase will indicate the presence of double helix DNA in the solution. If it is having single strand and they are not double helix, this much differences will not be available in this. And in the lower picture, it is showing that there are three types of DNA which be clearly available. If denaturation is not there, that means it is double stranded DNA, it is available at the bottom of this particular thing, absorbance is much less, and if absorbance is in between, which we call it as a TM, that means half denaturation complete. So, DNA is available 50% denatured and 50% annealed, and in the top you will be having 100% denaturation, that means double helix is already been denatured, which is known as hyperchromic effect. By seeing the OD at 260, we can able to find out the hyperchromic effect. While denaturation, whatever DNA binding dyes are available in the solution, that will removed from the DNA. So, whether DNA is denatured or double stranded form is there, that we can able to find out by seeing the illumination available from the DNA. If it is double stranded, it is not denatured, it is in the double helix form, the dyes will bind and it will give you illumination, you will get the total amount of your DNA present in double helix form. And if you give the temperature, so DNA will be denatured and dye will be comes out of this, and you are not able to see the illumination of the dye. That means the illumination will be less in the when DNA is denatured format. Fluorescent dyes in RT-PCR, there are two types of dye mostly used in illumination of DNA. Number one, it is a cyber green, which is low level saturation as given in this slide. That means the saturation is not proper. So, at a random distance they are available. However, the LC green, EVA green is another dye which is more saturating, and they are perfectly matching on double stranded DNA, and it will give you higher saturation and more precise fluorescence compared to cyber green. And this saturating dye LC green and EVA green, they are mostly used for high resolution melt curve analysis or HRM analysis. Once you are amplifying a particular DNA strand, the DNA strand may contain a particular SNP, what we know as the single nucleotide polymorphism. Say for example, in this case the blue strand is having AT, and however the red strand is having G versus C, which is only one place is different, otherwise perfectly it is similar. When you are amplifying this particular product in PCR, they are going to get homoduplex as well as heteroduplex. So, when there is homoduplex, that means the saturating dye can bind perfectly saturately throughout the DNA strand, whether it is a AT homoduplex or it is G-seed homoduplex. If it is heteroduplex, that means this combination of both the two homoduplex, then probably DNA saturating dye is not going to bind thoroughly in the particular DNA strand. That means the illumination is little bit less. This particular thing can be used to find out the level of illumination while is DNA is denaturing, and illumination how it is fast it is removing, and how your illumination you are getting. Based on that, you can able to find out what are the number of mismatch available or heteroduplex is there. This slide indicates the amplification of a DNA product, and if it is homoduplex, how it is there, and if it is heteroduplex, how this kind of mismatch is there, and if there is some mismatch, how they are going to denature, how quickly they are going to be separated, and what kind of illumination intensity you are going to get out of that. This can be used for large scale variant screening by using this high resolution melting analysis. High resolution melting. Fluorescent dye that binds to the double stranded DNA is added in the reaction. The dye shows high fluorescence in the bound state, but it is very low level of fluorescence when it is unbound. This is the very principle of this high resolution melting. After the final PCR extension, heteroduplex formation is facilitated by subjecting to the amplicon is 95 degree denatured for 30 seconds, followed by cooling 25 degree. We are running real time PCR with cyber green chemistry using a saturating dye and we want to know what are the known or unknown mutation available in your amplified PCR product, and this is done by high resolution melting curve analysis. How high resolution melting curve give you information? This is related to this particular. High resolution melting means your product is ready at the end of the real time PCR. You have your product in the tube and you are asking the machine to denature the product at high temperature slowly from low to very high temperature. So, while doing so, the DNA will denature, and how exactly it is denaturing, based on that the dye will be bound or unbound. So, based on that, whatever type of curve you are getting, based on the curve you can able to detect what kind of mismatch is probably there in your DNA strand. In this case, the red line indicates this is fast denaturing because of this mismatch, and it is going to give you red types of curve. And in blue curve, it is very slow denaturing, or this indicates slow denaturing means it is perfectly matched. That means this is a true homoduplex content. So, based on this type of heterozygotes available, you can able to tell that whether the SNP is there or not, whether the heteroduplex is there or not. This is clearly seen in the next slide. Here is the case study for high resolution melting curve by using cybergreen chemistry using Evagreen as a dye. Here PCR product is RT-PCR is over, and we are allowing the machine to go for melt curve analysis, and while melt curve analysis it will give you two types of melt curve analysis. At the top you can able to see there is a normalized high resolution melting curve, at the bottom you can able to see differential plot. In the top picture it is showing that the blue one is having homoduplex and the green and red one is having heteroduplex. The heteroduplex is quickly having mismatch, so it is quickly reducing the dye from the while denaturation process. However, the homoduplex is slowly releasing the dye, that is why the curve is little bit towards right side. That means slowly releasing, slowly denaturing and releasing the dye compared to the heteroduplex one, green and red one. And in differential plot you can able to see what are the different types available in your PCR product. This indicates by using high resolution melting curve using Evagreen or LC green, you can able to know what are the mismatch or heteroduplex probably available in your PCR product. In cybergreen chemistry, selection of primer is one of the important in mammalian gene expression or eukaryotic gene expression, where the gene is having intron sequences. In this particular slide, we are going to show the UCSC genome browser in mouse genome, where the gene GAPDH, which is most commonly used for housekeeping gene. This particular view, it is showing the different exon sequences of 5 exon sequences available, and the location of primer in brown color. The primer is located in 2 different exons, and in between there is a intron sequences, which is must for cybergreen chemistry. Otherwise, you may not be able to know whether your amplified product is from RNA or from genomic DNA. So, if you place your primer in the exon sequences, in both the exon, one is in the exon sequence and between there is intron sequences, probably you can eliminate a bigger product which may come from the genomic DNA contamination, but if it is from RNA cDNA, amplified from cDNA, you will be getting a perfect small product. So, based on that you can able to identify. So, place your primer in the exons and find out the exon sequences in yellow color. These are the exon sequences, and this dotted line in the orange color, it is showing it is the intron sequences. And in UCSC browser also you are going to give you the transcript abundance in the tissue. The blue color circle indicates the number of transcript available or mRNA which is available from GenBank, which is also showing here. This UCSC browser probably one of the important tool to visualize the exon and intron sequences and how you are placing your primer for execution of cybergreen chemistry. What are the different types of question you are going to answer by cybergreen chemistry? This important one is that by using cybergreen chemistry, you can estimate the gene expression of more than one gene in the cells or tissue. One is your housekeeping gene, you can keep as a normalizer or as a control. Other than this housekeeping gene, you can ask the expression of high or low level expression of 2 to 10 different types of gene expression in the particular tissue. Cyberorganic chemistry is mostly done by two steps. In one step you prepare cDNA, and the second step you go for expression purpose for more than one gene using the same cyberorganic chemistry using in different tube. Then primer optimization, PCR efficiency and range of detection is very important. You have to identify before you go for cyberorganic execution of the cyberorganic chemistry these three things: primer optimization, PCR efficiency and range of detection. Check for the primer dimer and any non-specific amplification if they are at all. If there is primer dimer or non-specific amplification, probably you are going to add error in your amplification or your analysis purpose. This is other than gene expression. You can go for screening of unknown mutation, as I told in case of this high resolution melting curve analysis. So you can go for 200 to 400 base pair PCR product, and you try to see how dyes are bound and unbound form while the PCR product is subjected to high temperature, so that it is going to denature and is going to drop this fluorescence molecule from that. So genotyping can be done by using high resolution melting curve analysis. This is another chemistry probably one can use for real time PCR analysis. This is Tuchman or hydrolysis probe step process. In this particular steps you have to use a probe which is shown at the end of this particular slide. This is one is red, is 5' side of the particular probe, it is labeled with a fluorescence one which is known as reporter, and in the green ball indicates it is a quencher, and both these things is connected by a oligonucleotide. Once both the dye are attached to this and they are the reporter dye is quenched by the quencher, so ultimately the illumination or the fluorescence from the tube is less. How Tuchman probe is going to functional in real time PCR? This particular indicates in Tuchman probe the area of your reaction, the particular area you are going to work is 100 base pair. Within this 100 base pair you have a forward primer, you have a reverse primer, and your SNP detection region should be covered by the Tuchman probe. And Tuchman probe is having one reporter and quencher, as I told earlier. The TM of the forward and reverse primer will be 58 to 60 degree, and Tuchman probe will have a TM which is 10 degree higher than the TM of primer, which is very essential part of the designing of this particular Tuchman experiment. The 5' exonuclease activity of the Tuck DNA polymerase will chop that particular reporter, the probe at 5' end, and between the fluorophore and the quencher, and thus releasing the fluorescence. How reaction is going to give you illumination is shown here. So you are placing a forward primer and reverse primer and a Tuchman probe, and by using your Tuck DNA polymerase it is going to chop that particular probe. So quencher is separated from the reporter, so this reporter molecule is going to give you illumination, and if you give the reaction, if there is mismatch in this particular probe, so this particular illumination is not going to happen. So once you have a illumination, that means the probe is properly binding. So you can place different types of Tuchman probe based on the mismatch you are expected in the template solution. So if different types of probe you can design, so reporter molecule different color you can add, so multiplexing can be done by this Tuchman reaction using different types of probe based on the expected variation in the nucleotide sequence region of the probe binding place. So let us see what are the differences between cyberorganic chemistry and Tuchman chemistry. Cyberorganic chemistry, it is easy to design the primer and it is very low cost of primer. So this is mostly we can use the cyberorganic chemistry. So disadvantage of cyberorganic chemistry is that only one gene you can do in one tube. So it is less specific to this. Any kind of unspecific sequence, if non-specific is there, then it will going to amplify. So there is not possible of multiplexing in a single tube. However, in Tuchman chemistry, advantage is very easy to implement and specificity is very high if we compare with cyberorganic chemistry, and use when most accurate quantification of the PCR product accumulation is desired. And multiple gene can be done by using same tube, using multiplexing different color added to the Tuckman probe. And disadvantage of the Tuckman chemistry is that it is difficult to design the probe. It is not possible for common lab to design this probe, and it is expensive also. So to design this probe is also this chemistry, the adding the fluorophore, and it is very expensive compared to the CyberGene chemistry. We are going for analysis of the CyberGene chemistry data. This is relative quantification. Then how we are going to quantify the available mRNA in the solution, so that compared to one particular gene, what are the other genes are going to express. To do this experiment, you have to go for target gene standard curve. Which one is used for the target gene? You have to prepare standard curve for that. How we are going for that? Prepare cDNA from your target gene and dilute the cDNA and get the CT value for each dilution and plot the CT value versus cDNA concentration and get the R square. See, dilute the cDNA 1x, 3x, 9x, 27x and 81x and get the CT value 30, 34, 37, 39 and 42 and plot in this cDNA versus the CT value and get the how this R square, that means how the slope is working. If it is R square value is 0.9, then probably it will give you more accurately to quantify your gene expression of that particular gene. This particular R square you are getting for the target gene. Similar R square value also you have to get for reference gene standard. So from the cDNA you dilute in a similar manner and get this CT value and plot this CT value versus their cDNA concentration and get the R square. If again it is coming the 0.9 or so, then probably you can use this reference gene as a reference relative quantification purpose for quantification of your gene of interest. Fold changes of target gene compared to your reference gene. You control gene you can use as a 1 and compared to control gene, what are the other gene you are going to expression, treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 3, treatment 4. So how they are going to fold changes you can able to find out by using this particular formula mentioned in the Pfaffel et al. In 2001 in Nucleic Acid Research published. This particular reference will give you details of the how we are going to plot this particular fold changes of target gene compared to your reference gene. Absolute copy number estimation by using CyberGene chemistry. You can also find out the absolute copy number of a particular gene available in the DNA. Generation of standard curve for known copies of a plasmid containing insert DNA sequences, which can be used as a reference for quantification of unknown gene copy number in the solution. Say for example, in the genomic DNA, you are having multiple copies of the same gene, you want to quantify correctly. So to quantify correctly the number of gene copies present in the genomic DNA and then compare the standard with your unknown sample. So how to prepare a known control? Plasmid with a particular gene of interest is used as a standard for estimating the copy number in the solution. So prepare the plasmid containing the insert and find out, this is the formula it is given here, in which you can find out the absolute number of the particular plasmid DNA diluted in this and dilute in the serial dilution manner and see for quantification of the particular gene by real time PCR by seeing the CT value and plot the log copy number versus CP value and get the standard curve. So by this is used for the standard one, which you are going to use as a standard for getting the absolute quantification of your unknown DNA sequences. So for getting the unknown sequences, so dilute the genomic DNA of the sample in a uniform concentration and amplification will be done by gene specific primer using the same primer and sample will be sample 1, sample 2, sample 3 and get the CT value X, Y, Z and similarly determine the exact copy of the gene in test sample by extrapolating the sample of CT values of the standard curve in a linear regression method. This sample number will be sample number 1, 2, 3 and get the CP value and get this copy number. What is the copy number? By comparing this thing. How it gives the result? You have a standard solution diluted in serial diluted manner and get the CT value and plot this curve in comes linear manner by CT value versus the log copy number, and then put your unknown sample wherever what is the CT value of unknown sample, and based on that you can able to find out the copy number of absolute 1. This is you are comparing doing the spiking experiment by using a particular cloned fragment in a plasmid and diluting this and comparing this particular CT value with your unknown sample. So you have to find out the range in which you are going to accurately calculate by doing the standard curve of your standard as well as unknown samples. Melting curve analysis. Whenever doing your Seibergin chemistry, melting curve is must. Melting curve will give you what is the quality of your product. That means this is not related to high resolution melting curve analysis. High resolution melting curve analysis is related to finding out of SNP or any mismatch. But melting curve analysis, this is simply used for Seibergin chemistry to see whether your amplification product is of your desired one or some non-specific amplification is there. Say for example, in this particular case, in the left side curve, it is showing only one peak. This indicates exactly you want a single product out of your primer you have designed for the Seibergin chemistry. So thereby this single peak is there. If you have a peak left side of this and having lower Tm value, that indicates you are having a primer dimer amplified along with your particular PCR product. If you have a product, if you have a peak, another peak right side of your main peak, that indicates you are having a non-specific product along with your main product, which is a very bigger peak, and in any small peak right side of that indicates any non-specific product of that. This melting curve will give you how exactly your primer is going to amplify and performing this real-time PCR. Even this melting curve analysis also, while doing this melting curve analysis, you can run this particular PCR product in agar-Aujla electrophoresis to see whether you are getting a product of a primer dimer or some non-specific product of that. Summary of the total real-time PCR. Reverse transcription followed by PCR is one of the most powerful tool to amplify and quantify small amount of mRNA gene expression in biological samples. Because of this high damping rate and limited annealing elongation, the RT-PCR system offers stringent reaction conditions to all PCR components, leading to a primer sensitive and a template specific PCR amplification. That means it is very highly specific for a particular gene you are going to analyze. The melt curve analysis and high resolution melting analysis offers a more options for detection of known and unknown mutations with amplified PCR product. This led to the development of a new kinetic RT-PCR methodologies and are revolutionizing the possibilities of mRNA quantification and analysis. Relative quantification are one of the most abundantly used procedure for gene expression studies. Absolute quantification can be applied with incorporation of appropriate control in the experiment. Diagnosis of infectious disease is also an important application of RT-PCR, which will be treated as qualitative as well as quantitatively. By now, you might have seen different part of the RT-PCR and its component and how it can be used. Although there are many theoretically possible chemistries are available, but Seibergin and Tachman chemistry seems to be the most widely used in real-time PCR. Seibergin chemistry, one of the most cheapest in this out of these all available different chemistries, and it can be used for many purposes. Tachman chemistry on the other way, it is high throughput, you can do different multiplexing can be done, different types of genotyping you can do, but this Tachman chemistry is a little bit expensive. It is not possible for all the lab to spend this much amount of money for preparation of this particular probe. And once you are preparing a probe, it may not be perfectly fit with your multiplexing of your experiment. So therefore, the Tachman chemistry one of the difficulties in most of the lab because of this money and different types of trial you are going to give. However, Seibergin chemistry, one of the important cheapest chemistry, and you can use much different types of work out of it if you want to know that. In my lecture, I have spent more time on how Seibergin can be harnessed. Say for example, Seibergin chemistry not only useful for the relative or absolute quantification of the RNA expressed in the cell, but it can be used for detection of the quality of your amplification product. Say for example, your amplification product, you want to screen for any known or unknown mutation. So for screening known or unknown mutation by using Seibergin chemistry and using LC green or EVA green saturating dye I have already told in this lecture. So, you can use this one and you can find out what are the known and unknown mutation available in this, and this can be important for pre-screening before you send your sample for sequencing, capillary sequencing. So, this can be used as a pre-screening for capillary sequencing. Even this particular chemistry, if you can use, this can replace SSCP, DGG, TGG and other mutation screening methods. So, this is one of the important chemistry one should know regarding this, using this particular real time machine. Thank you very much for seeing this lecture, and if you have some feedback, please let me know, so I can improve after that.